All right, so let's look at another just slightly more complex example. This will be a counter, right? That as you click on plus, it increases. If you click on minus, it decreases. Right? So two events, and the state will change over time as we interact with it. Right? So first we'll have a counter component that will basically just only depend on the outside world. Okay? That it'll have two buttons, the plus, minus, and then the value that will be passed in from the outside. Right? So let's do that. Let's create a counter element here. Component. There we go. We say new file, and this is counter. All right. So we'll need Redux here. I'm sorry, React. So we'll say import React from React. There we go. All right. Oops. So let's render this. If we go into our index page, let's just render this. Let's see what it looks like. So import counter component. I guess maybe we can just render it here. Let's see. Counter. Did I? Oh, I didn't. Actually, no. Let me just rename this. Just call it counter. And then let's say export it. So this will be export default, and this is counter. Right? And from our index, we can now just bring it in here. So it doesn't see it. Oh, no, it doesn't see it. Why don't you see it? Okay, fine. Let's import this. So import counter from component. And then this is counter. And let's do a counter here. Okay, there's our counter with a default value. Also another feature of ES6. You can have the properties, right, and then some default value for it if it's not passed in this case 0. Or it could be 10. So that could be 10. All right? All right, excellent. So let's keep going. What we'd like to be able to do is the buttons notify the some reducer that they have been clicked. For now, let's do something trivial as just alerting us that some event has occurred or not. Right, so, for instance, if we go here and click on plus, it says plus or minus. So yes, we know they work. And instead, what we're going to do is, okay, so we're going to do it slightly different. We're going to have an event handler, and what we're going to have, so what the connect does, when you connect and you pass the component that you want to connect in the Redux, React Redux connect, right? It can be handled in a dispatcher in the mapper, or it can pass the dispatch function down to the component, right? And then it can handle inside of the component. That's slightly less kosher, right? Since you would like the components to be independent on the fact that they have to be run inside of Redux, okay? But let's nevertheless explore that idea, okay? Because you might see this being used. So we have this dispatch. And here, right from the dispatch, we can generate the actions that the reducer will use. Right, so the connect, notice that the connect in the previous example, notice that the connect took two arguments, right? Took the property mapper and the dispatch mapper, right? And the dispatch mapper takes as argument the dispatch. See that? So it passes the dispatch to whoever you tell it to, right? It also passes it to the component itself. It passes the dispatch function to it as well. Right? Here, the kosher thing to do is to have a mapper, a dispatch to property mapper, and handle the dispatch outside of the component. But it can also be handled inside of the component because this same dispatch is also passed to the component itself, right? Like we're doing here. Right, so the connect here is going to pass the dispatch, and we're going to send events right from here. We're going to say dispatch, and we're going to generate an action of type, say plus, right? And the other one is going to be minus. Right? And then the reducer can decide what to do, and change and update the value to be something different. So that this value is going to be then mapped to be something less than 10, 9, 8, whatnot, right? Or going up through the mapper. Okay, make sense? All right, so let's do that. This event, we don't really need it. Right, so it could be just an empty parentheses. But if you want the event, it's being passed to you when you click on that button. Well, let's create the reducer. Let's create the counter reducer. So under reducers, let's create the counter reducer, or I'll just call it counter, lowercase. And again, remember that the reducer is just a function. There's nothing to it. Right? It's a function that takes two arguments. And the only thing that it does is that it returns a new JSON object. That's all it does. It can take the state, which is the current state. If there is no current state, you can give it a default state, right? Just like any ES6 function. Right? If no value is passed down to the state, it takes on whatever you give it as a default value here, right? And then the action, right? The switch is going to take the type, and if it sees plus, just because I used capital, or if it sees minus, it can calculate some other state. So it can do an alert minus, right, and then return some other state. The state that is going to be returning is whatever the state was, whatever the value used to be, increased by 1 or decreased by 1. Right? In this case, the default state is 0. So if you click on plus, it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Or it'll go 0, minus 1, minus 2, minus 3. Yes? Oops, sorry. So this will be, this will be what? It'll be value minus minus. Okay? That's it. Or we can also create a default. We don't really need a default since state already has a default. But no, let's say default, and we're going to return. Probably we could say that the default is just return the current state, right? So we don't know where we are, right? If it's none of the current, if it's none of the events above, then just stay in the current state. Whatever the current state was, stay there, right? Okay. There we go. All right, so now we have to connect all this, right? We have to connect all this. We'll create the store. All right, we need to do the mapper. Map the same. Okay, here's the mapper. Oh wait, counter app. What's the counter app? Counter. Oh, okay. So this is the connector. So let's do that. Typically, we would do this in a separate file, but here we're doing it right here in the index. In the index, notice that we have a store. The store here is from our old example, right? So I'm gonna stop that. I'm gonna remove that for now. Instead, we're gonna create another store from our other reducer. Now we're going to be using the counter reducer, right? So that's the counter from, and then the reducer lives where? Reducers, and here's counter. And we'll create a new store. We'll create a brand new store. We'll say const store, create store, and then this will be the counter store. Okay? And right now it's being sent over to the counter, which is our very basic element. We need to wrap that component inside of a container. Right? So let's create that container. We're going to do it right here. Let's see. Counter app. Here's counter app. Perhaps we can do that in a container. So this would be file counter app.js, which we'll need. Let's see, what do we need here? We'll need import React from React. We'll need probably need connect from React Redux. Okay. Probably need the counter itself. Import the counter from, let's see, where is it? It's one up, right? One up down to components, down to counter. Counter, there it is. And we need a mapper. So we need a property mapper. So this will be state to property mapper. It's going to take as argument the state, which the connect is going to pass us, and we're going to map it to the value that it's expecting, and we're going to grab it from the state.value. Right? And then now we can connect. We can do const counter app, which is going to be the result of calling connect, passing the mapper, state to property mapper, and then connecting to the counter. All right? So let's grab that counter app, so counter app, from which you just created, so from containers, counter app, there it is. And then just generate it here. Right, so this is counter app. All right, let's see if we broke this. What's this? Default. Oh, I don't believe I exported it. We need to export it. So this will be export, default, and then this will be counter app. No, counter app. There we go. All right, let's see if we broke this beyond repair. Oh, yes. Let's see, what do we want here? Counter, expected the reducer to be a function. It's not a function? Counter. Okay, it is a function. Oh, maybe I didn't export it. Export default. Counter reducer. Okay. Let's see. Let's give it a whirl. Let's see our reducer. Did I close my reducer? No, there it is. Maybe give it a different state. 20. There it is. All right. So the state is passing along. Notice that I haven't clicked on anything, right? So the default is to return the initial state, which the value is 20, right? And it maps to the property value through the state to property mapper, right? Through the counter app that feeds everything in there. So what we need to do is now feed these over here, right? So what we need to be able to do here is right from the counter. Notice that we're generating these pluses and minuses, right? Oh, wait, maybe actually minus. It's already working, right? We notice that we skipped the part where we mapped the properties to the dispatch by passing the dispatch right into the component, right? But that's usually considered bad practice, right? Because you want to decouple these things, right? So that the component itself can be treated all by itself with no dependencies on anything, right? You can pass it the values, you can pass it the functions, right? And those functions can live outside, right? So you can create your own independent unit test, right? So that if you click on that, it calls my function. I want to make sure that it calls my function. That's all I want to know, right? Whether it generates and whatnot, that could be a different thing. So generating the dispatch is usually considered bad practice. So let's fix it. So instead of using the dispatch, we might want to do is call plus and minus. Right, so somebody needs to pass those functions to us. Okay? And here what we want to do is, instead of doing it this way, we're going to do a plus. We're going to call on plus, and we're going to call on minus. I shouldn't have removed it. I'll leave that in a minute. I'll remove this in a second. So what we're going to do in the counter app, we're going to create a mapper. We're going to say const the dispatch to property mapper, and this is going to receive the dispatch function, which is going to return a map that's going to say if the function const if the function is called plus, right? Then call what? Call this guy, dispatch plus. See that? All right, and close. Am I missing something? Oh, sorry, this is colon. Right. Now we can safely remove this. Now we can safely remove this and just say plus. Call this plus function. Okay? Same thing with minus. I'm just going to grab this here. And just map this to minus. And so minus here, is going to map to dispatch type minus. Right? So now we can pass in this as the second argument of the connect and do the connection. Right? So instead of handling it inside of the component, we've removed it from there, and we're just passing it along here, the map. Right? And it works just the same. All right, works exactly the same. Make sense? Everybody okay? All right.